Welcome to the show. So the first piece of information comes from Bank XRP. This came out a little while ago, and it's the VP of MasterCard, and he leaks that they're working with Ripple. Listen to this.
But we think it's coming. So as a result, we said, okay, well, let's at least get ready to set up the stage. And in doing so, we're working with a number of different partners, with Ripple, DBS, different companies around the world.
They're working with Ripple and DBS. Well, DBS is one of the largest banks in the world, and they're working with Ripple. Now, MasterCard, who's one of the incumbents, Visa and MasterCard are tied to almost every credit and debit card.
To say, well, how can you help this whole transaction go from front to back? We've set up all the networks, we're ready to go, but the activity is beginning to come about slowly, right? Where people are actually holding it. Initially, the people who bought cryptos, they thought it was going to grow 10x or 20x or 100x, whatever the case may be. But now they're really thinking about using those funds for transactions because they are easier, right? If I can travel to another country and use my digital assets to make a payment instead of having to convert, local funds at the bank at the airport, it's much easier for me. It makes it seamless. And what we're doing is that facilitating those transactions. The ability for the fact that you've got 50 million merchants on a global level, which will accept a MasterCard. We're just kind of plugging into that and saying, well, go ahead and use it. Doesn't matter what kind of currency you have. Either, you have fiat currency, you have a digital asset, you have CBDC, NFT, whatever the underlying currency that you have, we'll be able to facilitate that for you, right? So that's what we're trying to get to.
All right, so any type of asset can be exchanged underneath the hood for local fiat currency. So how is that all taking place? We know that Ripple's laser focus is to create an internet of value and to provide liquidity for these larger institutions, right? So they're partnered with Ripple. I wonder how they're going about, turning a CBDC into the local currency, or turning a digital asset into the local currency, or turning a cryptocurrency into the local currency to pay the merchants, right? So I found that pretty interesting because this just recently came out. I listened to this 3 days ago, and it, there are some revealing things that this guy says. Listen to this.
Between US and LAC, there you need to know who the counterparty is. Can you exchange necessary information to build trust to make sure that the transaction would be successful when they post the transaction onto the blockchain? Ultimately, we want financial institutions, governments, and other regulated players to build solutions onto the public blockchain. You can only do that if you have a trustable, verifiable way to post transactions onto the network. We think we can help. We're working with a number of partners to do that, and we hope more use cases will emerge out of this as well.
Can you disclose some of those partners on this project called MasterCard Crypto Credential?
Yeah, we have a number of wallet partners, Uphold, Lyrium, Bit2Me, Mercado Bitcoin, and we also have, what is interesting about this is that all of this gets built in some public blockchain. We see a number of the public blockchain networks joining us in this announcement as well. That includes Polygon, Solana networks, Aptos, Avalabs, and so forth. So this is just a starting point. We think each of those blockchains will bring a set of developers into this who uses this framework, where we can all build solutions that are verifiable, trustable, safe, and simple to use. And ultimately, that's how we scale this ecosystem.
Now,
So MasterCard and Visa are massive, right? And they're saying that, MasterCard's saying that they're building directly on public ledgers. And he gave the example of Avalanche, Polygon, and Solana. But they're getting their hands dirty and working with the ledgers. So the guy before was talking about a medium of exchange being able to swap anything of value for anything of value, while this guy is talking about building infrastructure that talks to these different crypto networks. So this is a post by the XX network. If you're unaware, I work with the XX network. I have a bias towards the XX network because there is a relationship there. Now, XX_network. Please go out and follow them and listen to this. This is Rick Carback. He's the co-creator of Elixir. Listen to what he has to say.
The amount of fraud that is enabled by, I want to call it the classical paper-based systems is obscene, and that fraud translates to your personal pocketbook. And to circle back to the original question, especially with the political environment as it is right now, I am worried. I think there is a lot of risk with some of these technologies kind of being shut down or hampered. They're using, poor opinions that they themselves have manufactured because they're not enforcing their own laws, particularly against crypto, but also tech in general, to create some really horrible legislative proposals. The chat control effort happening in the EU, and especially there was a Swedish lawmaker that talked about it, and it's I don't even think she understands the law that she's proposing. I'm also very concerned about the Restrict Act, right? That's the act that's supposed to be banning TikTok in the United States. But if you read it, it really is just giving powers to the president that would allow the president to basically shut down any protocol that works internationally, or at least undermine it substantially with, penalties.
Okay, so the first piece of information, he says the banking system. So if I had your routing number and your bank number, I can essentially just send money off of your account into my account. So the banking system is really vulnerable to fraud, yet, they criticize crypto. With crypto, you can create a read-only. So when I create a wallet address, that's a read-only. People can see what's in my account, but they can't do anything with my account unless they have my private key. So that's what's interesting about the banking system versus crypto is, the banking system's filled with fraud. Now, the other thing is he mentions the Restrict Act. If you're unaware, the Restrict Act is coming out of DC, and they're trying to make it sound like it all has to do with TikTok, but it doesn't. It has to do with all types of tech, and it's really this open-ended policy that allows the government to pretty much do whatever they want and interpret the law however they want. It's really ambiguous. So one of the things that's coming out of it is 20 years in prison for using a VPN to circumvent geofencing. So this came out of RTGS Africa, and it's talking about the Bank of England project that used Interledger protocol to improve upon its RTGS by introducing a new functionality known as the Interledger protocol to support the synchronization of payments between two simulated RTGS real-time gross settlement ledgers that enable payments to be made across different ledgers and networks across the world. Such initiative could be implemented in Africa as being a pan-African payment system. And you can see here that, like any other account holder, these institutions can store balances, reserves in these accounts, or use them to make payments. Currently, there's more than 45 central banks that have RTGS infrastructure, whereas Cameroon, Central Africa, have a synchronized RTGS known as System de Grâce. And that is like how the Bank of England project was set up. So these countries right here are all using some type of interledger synchronized RTGS system. So Congo, African Republic, Chad, and some of these other countries. So pretty cool. Now this is Brian Armstrong from Coinbase. Listen to what he has to say.
We're going to work with multiple regulators to make this industry safe and trusted. And a Wells notice at this stage, when there is not a clear rule book, is not constructive, and it's not good for America. We are prepared to defend that position in court, but it doesn't have to come to that. We welcome a true dialogue about a workable path forward for our...
So what's crazy to me is Brian Armstrong, Coinbase, they had a ton of time to organize crypto, to organize all the big players in crypto, to collectively go after the SEC, to pool their resources and demand answers from the SEC, yet they cowered out of that situation. John Deaton, told everyone this is not the first enforcement action that you're going to see out of the SEC. They're going to go on a rampage. That's exactly what they've done. Yet here's Brian Armstrong pleading that they could still, step back and do all this stuff, and he's really being a coward, right? They have a ton of money. They went public. All these different crypto companies, they have a lot of money and resources. They should be using that to demand answers, yet they're not. You should be lobbying, doing everything that they need to do, and they're not. They're just being cowards. Now, this is a MojoLoop presentation, and it's how digital public goods are bringing the $10 trillion informal economy into the digital payments loop. Now, if you're unaware of this, when you go to a bank and you sign up for a bank account, the bank's actually paying money just to have you as a customer. So if you're not a good customer, if you don't give them enough money and borrow enough money from them, well, guess what? You're not really worth it, right? So a lot of people don't really qualify to get a bank account. They're unbanked. So that whole entire economy, all of the people in that economy adds up to about $10 trillion. That could be brought into the banking system and the economy, and then you 10x that, right? You can bring in $10 trillion and then fractional reserve lend it and make it even more. So if you don't know, MojoLoop is freeware. It's for central banks to create payment systems. It's for any country to create a payment system. So a lot of countries don't have enough resources to hire development teams to build this stuff. So that's where MojoLoop comes in. And they're partnered with the World Bank, the UN, digital public goods, and they're creating out-of-the-box payment systems for any central bank to use. And you can see that the system is pretty fragmented, and pretty soon it's going to be connected. And you could see that the core technology is Interledger. Well, XRP is optimized for Interledger. The people that made RippleNet and XRP, all of those developers had a plan in mind of how this is going to work out. And Interledger is agnostic. You can use any coin, any fiat, anything with it, but they design it so XRP works really well with it. So the MojoLoop community has over 1,400 participants. The notable projects, look, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is part of this. The UN, Visa, this is Myanmar. There's 30 financial institutions. This is Tanzania, and there's 62 banks with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations and Rockefeller. So Rockefeller, Bill and Melinda Gates, Google, and you can see that here, Google is all donating money to see this infrastructure built for developed nations to have advanced payment systems. And that's going to bring in a lot of different people into this world of finance. Well, the other thing is Africa's extremely rich with natural resources. If you want to trade with Africa, guess what? You need to send them money. They need to accept money. All of that needs to happen, right? It's really difficult for that to happen if you have archaic payment systems. Now, the other piece of information comes out of Digital Convergence, USP 2030. And what's particularly interesting in this PDF is, again, they talk about MojoLoop and some of the different initiatives. Well, a while back, Project Nexus came out, and that was from the BIS, and everyone got really concerned that Project Nexus could replace what this technology does. But guess what? It looks like Project Nexus is integrated into MojoLoop. MojoLoop is collaborating with ISO to standardize instant payment protocols for financial inclusion, also working with Nexus to integrate the world of finance with mainstream financial services, and with Visa to enable international services. I hope you guys all enjoyed the show. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you enjoy content like this, please consider joining my Patreon.